Tim Modano with Kono.
Hal Moffett, El Paso County.
Roy Rosenthal, Manitou Springs.
Kim Mutchler at large.
Ann Esch, Green Mountain Falls.
Ellen Hasse, Teller County.
Bill Bowles, Park County.
Adam Resner, El Paso County.
Tamara Dibner, City of Colorado Springs.
Julie Ott, League of Women Voters.
Orrin Childers, Citizen at Large.
Tom Fifley, City of Colorado Springs.
Terry Hayes, Town of Monument.
Aubrey Day, at large.
Jessica McMullen, PPACG.
Courtney Stone, Citizen at Large.
Okay, thank you. And we do have a quorum, so I think we're ready to go ahead and start. With our consent agenda today, we are going to have to pull item.
There you go.
There we go. We are going to need to pull item 3.
It's not on yet. There you go.
Should know that, I just did it yesterday. Okay, we need to pull item 3 on the consent agenda because Bill is not able to attend.
Brian Vituli will not be able to attend.
Okay, Brian will not be able to attend, there we go. All right, so do I need a motion for that, or can we just do it because he's not here?
We do need a motion to approve the consent agenda, consent item, but I know we're going to have another item. The minutes are going to have a correction as well.
Yes, I had a suggested correction for the minutes, so I assume we have to pull that off of the consent agenda. I don't know if it requires a motion to pull it from the consent agenda. Okay. So I would move that we approve. I don't know how you do that, Jessica. Sorry, I should.
I don't know the formal way, but I would say that the minutes from our last meeting are missing a 2 in item 4B, as in the word 2 recommended to the board for approval. So,
can I just move that we pull 2B off of the consent items for starters?
I actually think that with those 2 changes to the agenda and to the minutes, that someone would move to approve with those changes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, do I have a motion?
I think Ellen's been paying attention.
Ellen?
I also have a request for correcting the agenda, the minutes from last month.
Okay.
Under consent item 2A on last month's draft minutes, my name needs to be corrected spelling, and I'm not sure that I moved for approval.
You did.
I did? Thank you. Never mind. Thank you.
We'll fix your name.
Okay. Okay, so with the consent agenda, then we need to make changes to the minutes, and then we also need to pull item 3. And so we should be...
What we need is we need someone to move to approve the consent item with that change to the agenda and to the corrections to the minutes.
So moved, Hal Moffett.
Seconded.
Okay, and that was Ellen. Okay. All in favor? Aye. Okay. Any opposed? I was at some meeting where they did the opposed first, and there were no opposed, so everything just went right through. That was pretty cool. I've never seen that done before. We're not doing that here yet. I don't have that down. Okay. So then let's go ahead and let's make the correction to the minutes. All right?
Yep.
And Julie, you had a correction to the minutes?
Yes, but Jessica commented on that already. The second paragraph in 4B was just, it needed the word "to." So it should read, I believe Mr. Hal Moffett moved a positive recommendation to the Board of Directors.
Okay.
And that's the key thing.
Okay, and then, Ellen, are we all right with yours? Everything's okay? Okay, then we need to go ahead and pull item number 3. So I need a motion to do that. The presenter is not here.
I make a motion that we pull item number 3 off today's agenda.
Okay, second? Pardon?
It's just 3A, or it's
Yeah, just be 3A.
3A? Okay.
Okay, and then do we have a second to that?
Second.
Okay, Aubrey, okay. So we have 2 seconds, whoever did it. Did you get who did it? Okay. Okay, that works. All right, so we are now past the consent agenda, and we're ready to move on. Am I correct? Okay.
Can I ask a quick question? So 3A, so Brian was not able to come today. Did he say if there was no change there is no status update, or whether there was a status update?
He said that there are several things that are currently in review and transition, so he wanted to come when he had a more concise and clear update to give us.
Okay.
Okay.
He'll be here, I just don't know when.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, next one, wastewater recycling.
Real quick, do we
Jenny?
still need to approve the minutes from last time?
Yeah, we need to approve them as amended.
Okay, I'm sorry.
We already did.
I thought we did that.
All right, proving the minutes as amended. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, opposed? Good. Thank you. Okay, all right. So I think we're ready to move on to 3B, and that's wastewater recycling.
So Jenny Bishop from Colorado Springs Utilities will be here to present and talk to us about this. The reason she is presenting is we are expecting some action items and information relating to this in upcoming months, but we don't see her here, so we're going to go on ahead and just do that public comment whenever she gets here.
Okay, so we're on to action items, and that's 4.
We have to ask if there are any public comments.
All right, are there any public comments? It's not on here. Okay. Okay, action item 4A. And Catherine.
Hello, good afternoon. Catherine Wenger, Transportation Planner. We have a request for a TIP amendment, which is our short-range transportation improvement program, or the list of federally funded projects in the region. We have a request from the Colorado Department of Transportation. This is to add a project to 2019. It is for I-25 ramp metering for $3.3 million through faster safety funds. These are state funds. And we actually have a CDOT representative here to discuss this project a little bit more, since it's kind of a new concept in the region. This is Jason Nelson.
Welcome, Jason.
Thank you.
Nope, that's not you.
No.
Can you? It's like, I can't see.
No, it's all right. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. I am the traffic engineer for Region 2 for Colorado Department of Transportation. We do want to do some ramp metering in I-25, so I think I'll go over our first phase that we would like to do.
What is ramp metering?
Oh, that's a great question. So it's like signalizing the on-ramps to the interstate. And so it's just a quick green, red, and it kind of goes. And I'll go over how they operate and how we plan to operate them. But yeah, just signalizing the on-ramps. That's a good place to start. Thanks, Catherine. So let me zoom in. So our first phase that we kind of selected, we went through an accident review. Because there's multiple benefits to ramp metering. So there's a safety component, and then there's an operational benefit. It really depends on how you deploy it and your density of ramp metering. So for our first phase, we're not going to have that many, so we really went after the safety aspect of it. So we looked at on-ramps that experience high turbulence, and so the result of that is rear-end accidents and side swipe same direction. So not a particularly significant accident type, but there was quite a bit. So I think this will help with delay. Accidents usually increase delay, so we're hoping to reduce accidents quite a bit with this first round. We do have plans to meter all the way through the springs. So once you have a really good density of ramp meterings, all your on-ramps are signalized, you can kind of get a big operation benefit to it. And so what you'll experience is you'll have a predictable travel time through the springs. It'll be pretty consistent, and accidents should go down. We do have some metrics we are planning to watch with ramp metering. Just mainly the travel time index. So that's exactly what it is, how predictable your trip through the springs is. Is it reliable? Is it consistent? So that's kind of things you want to go. So I have a good story. I work in Pueblo, and I live in the Springs. So I commute home, and last week I had to get braces for my oldest daughter. And I didn't know if I should leave an hour and a half or 2 hours to get to the dentist. So it's kind of a big problem, because there's really, you don't know how bad rush hour it's going to be. Because it could be from 3:30 to 6:30, or it could be 4 to 5:30. There's a lot of variance in it. So I'm looking to kind of smooth that out, make it more consistent. So South Academy, we'll just start with the South. South Academy Boulevard doesn't really have a high accident problem. What it does have is a pretty prolonged left turn phase, so people coming from the college, coming onto I-25, we give them about 40 seconds green time. That is a lot of cars we shove onto the interstate. So what you see just north of this is the average running speed drops quite a bit. And so that's just that turbulence of every large platoons of cars jamming in on the interstate. So I think if we meter them, just allow 2 cars to go, it'll be a variable rate. I'll go into that. I think it'll help smooth that out. And so hopefully your average running speed won't dip so bad. And here we kind of get into more of our accident-prone areas, Bijou, northbound. Want to meter that, southbound, northbound, Uinta, Fontanero, northbound, southbound, Fillmore, northbound, southbound. Same with the Garden of Gods, both directions, and for southbound Rock Rittman, and then northbound Nevada. Eventually, I'm thinking 3 phases of ramp metering. So this is the first phase. I'd hope to do 2 more and a third. They just get more expensive because you really have to do some work on the ramps to really make them work. These will work without too much to do. So I could go over this, but I think I'd rather spend time telling you how we plan on operating these. So let me see if I can zoom in. So here's just a typical plan sheet. So you will have the 2 signals adjacent to the on-ramp, and you'll go from green to red at some kind of variable metering rate. And so we watch the passage, so we have detection after the stop bar. We have detection to set your arrival rate, and then we have mid-ramp detection. So if we have a high occupancy here, meaning people are starting to stack on the ramp, we increase the metering rate. So I like this idea. It's pretty inexpensive, but the benefit, I'm hoping to get 3 or 4 minutes out of the ramp metering until we have to flush it. So let me talk about flushing the ramp. And so we do have detection near the intersection, not at the intersection. It's a couple hundred feet away. So ideally, your volume and speed on I-25 will trigger the ramp metering. So we've met a threshold, and it's time to meter it to smooth out the turbulence. So then the ramp metering will kick on, and we'll have some time for the meter. So we'll go green, red, green, red. And then once we start stacking, the metering rate will pick up to kind of clear it. And so once we get back to here, I-25, it's pretty crowded. The speed on I-25 at this point is pretty low. So ramp metering is mostly for safety. So we're not sending people doing 50 miles an hour down the ramp to traffic that's going 30 miles an hour. So it'll kind of smooth out that, but in reality, it'll just flush the ramp and kind of keep it slow. The rate will be pretty quick. Did that make any sense?
Is this very similar to what's going on in Denver today?
Well, so it is and isn't. So Denver uses a very old system. So the difference with the system we're using is you can put a lot more inputs, so I can have a lot more thresholds. So in Denver, we have 4 metering rates. So it's 10 seconds, 5 seconds, 2 seconds, 1 second. Here we can actually set up quite a bit of thresholds based on volume and speed. So, I mean, you could have 11 seconds for 5 minutes. It could go up to down to 2 seconds for 10 minutes, it's going to be adjusting all the time. And so that's kind of the beauty of the mid-ramp queue. I'm hoping to really utilize them to get a lot more life out of this. So it's a little different.
Okay, good. Yes, Ellen?
I'm concerned. I understand that we're dealing with congestion, and I understand we're dealing with commuter hours. My experience directly with metering is in the 470 corridor around Denver, and as a driver, I found my experience to be mixed at best. I certainly didn't feel any safer. And I think it had a lot to do with the expectation of acceleration on the ramp using the metering versus the traffic speed into which one is merging. And I'm concerned about how you all are dealing with that in your planning. I think the merge lane length and the speed of the traffic you're entering are huge factors as far as safety. The other factor that I'm concerned about going forward is more and more alternative vehicles being able to make speed at the proper sequence to merge into traffic safely. And I don't know if you want to cover all of that at one spin or not, but thank you.
No, those are great questions, very insightful. So here, no, you're right on. You're spot on to some of the really magic of ramp metering. So again, the meters don't kick on all the time. So once speed and occupancy dip, so say average running speed's 45 miles an hour. So our acceleration length has shrunken, and we can turn the ramp metering on based on the stop bar location. So there is a lot of engineering forethought going into it. So no longer are we accelerating to 65 or 70, ideally. We're really accelerating to 45. And so these ramps were selected based on that. Future ramp metering will have to have that pavement widening. So this is the cheap route. Any future other phases will have to be lengthened just to meet those criteria.
Okay.
No, it's very insightful. Connected vehicles, I don't want to geek out on you guys or anything, so I mean, we could talk about it, but I think it's going to be, it's down the road, but I think that's going to be self-sufficient. So I don't think the meters will have any benefit in a fully autonomous or connected world. The cars hopefully will manage themselves and monitor turbulence and accidents and average running speed and adjust, hopefully.
Bill?
Hal Moffett. First to comment, and I guess that means that Colorado Springs has hit the big time. We're going to have ramp metering.
Yeah, looks like it, Helen, sir.
Rats.
Yeah.
Question is, are the ramp lengths, in other words, the run-up areas to the planned metering systems, are they sufficiently long at the present time, or will they or is that part of a project?
No, currently the ones we plan metering are good. The only one we did do micro simulation on Garden of the Gods. That was the only, or no, Rock Rimmon. Apology. So Rock Rimmon was
Right.
the one that was really
On the southbound.
right.
Short,
So here we have a maximum meter rate, and it's conservative. It's not what our micro simulation said we could do. But I mean, those things are subjective and full of human flaws. So we do have a good model. The rest of them, there's no concerns with. This is the one we took a closer look because we really don't want to spend money to have a meter that never turns on. That'd be the worst thing. And so it won't turn on to make things worse. It'll turn itself off. So it'd be pretty bad. It was a big concern of ours not to.
Okay, because I make an observation that, at least in my opinion, or my thought very quickly, some of the ramps, if they get backed up, they're going to back up onto major roads, like Garden of the Gods.
Yeah.
Right there is extremely busy. North Nevada already has a major runoff because it's basically an exit lane all the way up to Woodman.
Yeah.
Those things don't change any of this, or they are properly
no.
set up now for using ramp metering?
So the only thing we're working with the City of Springs is Bijou, because the approach is weird. It's actually, Bijou kind of self-meters with local signals, but it's weird. It's not harmonious is a good word. So the good thing about the backup queue detection, if we detect cars piling up here, the ramp metering's pretty much over at this point. We'll just get them through.
Okay.
Yeah, so we'll watch occupancy right here, and I think it's 180 feet from actually South Academy. That's pretty typical. So if we're just stopping cars there, right mirroring, we really don't want to cause accidents on a local street. Well, no, it's a great point. I'm not knocking it. It's good insight.
Okay. Courtney?
What's the implementation timeline, and do you guys generally do public notice or just track blood pressure that morning?
No, it's funny because we have some old media releases, but it's 27 years old is when we first did metering in Colorado, and it looks just like it belongs way back then. So we've been talking about we really just need to do some customized outreach, just get familiar media faces and front let people know. And I do, and I have committed to report out with the Springs, the City of Springs, on these metrics. Right now, we do report to the governor's office on I-25, the travel time index. And so it's getting worse. And so they're like, well, what can you do? And it's like, well, we need $190 million when we get some life out of this. Or we can get $3 million and buy some time. So I think it'll help.
And your implementation timeline?
Oh, sorry. So I have to do another presentation here. The plans are done. So we have to do kind of a system engineering analysis with FHWA, and that's kind of unique. And so our biggest hurdle was our ConOps, and so we had to demonstrate and prove that we have the capability and infrastructure to manage and operate these. And so we're done with that. So it's really these presentations. We do have to do the utility investigation. It's a new law. So we're dealing with that. So it really depends on when we can get the SUE done, because I'm unfamiliar with that process.
Like 3 months, 6 months?
I hope at summer I want to be building. So we're moving fairly quickly. May would be ideal.
Okay. Bill?
It seems like most of these intersections have close to half-mile merge lane coming in. It seems like you're going to have trouble controlling that from back here to where they merge up there. And I just don't quite understand how that works.
So,
going between, some of those have a complete lane between one entrance to the exit. Well, like Nevada to Woodman is a full lane to merge and close to 3/4 of a mile. So how are you going to stop them back here and control the merging in that 3/4 of a mile?
So when you have a lot of ingress, egress, and it's called an auxiliary lane when we connect interchanges, you see really a lot of accidents here. So what we're not trying to control them, we're trying to give them gaps, right? So we're not saying, well, you got to work around the 7 vehicles, right? So you want to get over 6 out of these 7 want to get over, and so it creates this problem. And that's where we see turbulence. Everyone slows down, braking, and the according effect. Here we're just going to give you a nice gap, maybe 40 feet, if that, and so hopefully it'll reduce your stress and you can just merge on over. That's the goal.
Okay, further questions? Yes, Tamara.
So I first want to be on the record to say I support this. I think ramp metering is a great way of trying to buy some time. Hopefully by then maybe we can do more connected vehicles and then we don't need to widen I-25. So my first question is, how long do you think, how much time will this buy us, this investment?
So it depends on your goal. So I used to be young, and I really wanted to improve things with a lot of technology. I've had enough experience that if I can maintain the status quo and make things not worse from year to year, I feel good about myself. I know. It tells you I'm getting too crusty and old.
So we're setting the bar really kind of low.
No, I drive this. It's getting worse every day. So no, I don't think it's I think it's a high bar, really. So,
okay, I apologize.
So if I can deploy 29 ramps out 32, that's the goal. I think, we've been running ramp metering in Denver quite a while, and it's recently expanded. If I could get 15, 20 years, I'd be pretty happy.
Okay.
Oh,
Just
yeah.
kind of leveling things out.
Yeah.
And I wanted to follow up on Al's question about the Garden of the Gods, that those ramps, there's so many lights there, just the streets that are coming into it. And is there enough storage space so it doesn't impact the other side roads that are coming into Garden of the Gods? I guess that's one area I'm kind of having a difficult time rationalizing that this could work.
Yeah, so when you have those short areas, your metering rate just can't exceed a certain threshold, so
Okay.
it's pretty low. So you get less operational benefits, but you get still the same improved safety component, which is still a win, right? So we just can't have long metering rates, but I really don't see a really long metering rate. I mean, unless like 11 seconds is really long, and that's so I think the one thing I think everyone will notice immediately is, so instead of having a rush hour from 3:30 to 6:30, you're going to see a pretty consistent rush hour from 4:15 to 5:30. So really on the shoulders of your rush hour and breakdown flows is where you get the biggest benefit. It really smooths those out, so.
Okay.
One other
Cal?
question. I noticed that Route 24/Colorado Avenue is not planned to be metered.
Which one? I'm sorry.
Route 24/Colorado Avenue.
Cimarron, yeah.
Cimarron.
Cimarron.
Yeah, Cimarron.
Is not on the meter list. I know that intersection was just worked on, but it does have plug flow because of the way the lights are set up. I'm just wondering why it's not on the list. Not that I'm
No.
advocating more.
So we really want to do accurate turning volumes, what's coming into the ramp. And so when we were doing our study, it was under construction. So we couldn't get a really good picture. But,
Oh, okay.
I mean, if it was now we were starting the study, I think Bijou, Cimarron, that's where your initial breakdown for northbound happens. I think
Yep.
everyone knows. And that's your start of your problem. So you need to smooth that out one way or another. So I agree. It'll be on phase 2.
Good.
Okay.
Oh, Cimarron?
Yeah.
Yeah, we just couldn't study
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be fair.
I've got a couple of questions. Number one, I assume that you're turning the metering on and off based on the speed on the main highway
And occupancy.
and
Just-
occupancy.
And occupancy.
So it's congestion and speed.
Right.
So if it gets down to 40, 50,
45, depending on
something
each
like
ramp.
that, then the ramp speed will come on. The second question, is this tied into the larger CDOT program of, your DAISY cloud database and controlling all the traffic flow through the state?
The Internet of Things.
It will, I mean, yes. I think, I'm going to go into a big spiel here.
Well,
So- No, it's a really good one.
Well, I was going to cover that later anyway.
Oh, okay.
In the end of the meeting.
Okay. Well, I'll just tell you that we applied for a grant through FHWA with the City of the Springs because we did some really neat research on Powers Boulevard, that we did a lot of great improvements. And so we were looking to take some of that innovation and things we found and apply it to ramp terminals and ramp metering. We did not get the grant. It's a great idea. So we were recently approached by possibly doing a pooled study with FHWA, Astro, City of Springs, and a university. And I think we'll do work on Powers, but hopefully at the end we can bring it and apply it, performance metrics with ramp metering and ramp terminal signals. It's pretty neat stuff. So
Okay. Further questions?
One more, sorry.
Oh, sure, Hal, go ahead.
How old or new is the cost estimate on this?
a couple of weeks, and I think it's even gone down
So
500,000.
So we should not expect any tip amendments coming back and trying to find another $1 million or $2 million.
No guarantees.
No guarantees.
I don't want to lie to you.
I
No,
move
but I'm
that-
pretty confident.
Does that help, Hal?
Yeah, well, yeah, sure.
Sure.
I would move that for approval, for this to be recommended to the board for their approval.
I second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay,
Thanks,
very
guys.
good. Okay, thank you. Okay, Cherokee. Item 4B.
Good afternoon. I'm Ken Prather, PPACG Transportation Planner. The Cherokee Metropolitan District has submitted a site application to add a new treatment process to its existing water reclamation facility out east of Colorado Springs. The district needs to reduce total dissolved solids in its effluent and has chosen the reverse osmosis purification process to accomplish this. The full Water Quality Management Committee met after the mail-out of your packet, and they did recommend approval of the site application unanimously. Amy Lathan, General Manager of the district, is here with a couple of her people to answer any questions or provide the details if you would like them.
Are there any questions or concerns? Or
I think we need to, I think it'd be great, and I recommended that we at least get a 5-minute overview.
Definitely.
I think that water and water issues, and particularly reuse and recycle, should be something that we pay attention to vigorously. So I think it'd be great if we just get a short overview.
Okay, thank you, Hal.
Hi, I'm Mike Warsack. Mike Warsack with Forsgren. I'm an engineer with Forsgren Associates. We're the engineering firm assisting the district with this project. This presentation we have is the same presentation that we gave to the Water Quality Management Committee. So I'll just kind of go through it a little bit more briefly and give you an overview. Let's see where we're at here with the slideshow. So as Ken mentioned, the location of the facility, the water reclamation facility, is about 16 miles east of the interstate in the Ellicott area at the intersection of, near the intersection of Peyton Road and Drennan Road. And the water reclamation facility, the wastewater is treated at that location, and then the effluent, after it's treated, is currently discharged to rapid infiltration basins about 5 miles further to the east. To recharge the aquifer, the Upper Black Squirrel alluvial aquifer. This plant was constructed in 2010. It originally had been located closer to town on Sand Creek and went into operation in 2010. And as I mentioned, it currently discharges to the Upper Black Squirrel Creek alluvial aquifer, which is a designated groundwater basin. And the district has been unable to meet their permit requirement of total dissolved solids in the effluent, the concentration of 400 milligrams per liter, which is in their permit, and they're currently under consent order with CDPHE to meet that by August 31st, 2022. We went through a process of looking at different technologies to what would be the best way to remove the total dissolved solids. So total dissolved solids are essentially the salts that are in the wastewater, and wastewater plants are not typically designed to remove that. It's something that would be, possibly looked at for drinking water, but very unusual to have this kind of permit limit for a wastewater plant, which is why the plant wasn't originally designed to meet that. So as looking at different technologies, we did decide to go with a reverse osmosis process, which requires some pre-filtration ahead of it. So another membrane process of ultrafiltration ahead of that, and then some pre-treatment with some other filters prior to that to try to take some of the solids out before it actually gets to the reverse osmosis membranes. And we are looking at phasing this construction over time as the flows increase, and we'll talk about that on the next slide. So when the reverse osmosis membranes reject the salt, so we capture those salts, it creates a concentrate that has to be disposed of. And so deep injection wells is one of the procedures that can be one of the methods that's used in order to dispose of the concentrate. And we'll talk about that in a little bit more detail in a different slide.
Are there any questions right now on this? Because this is technical stuff, but.
Sure. The concentrate that is up here is a reference to the salts.
Yes.
Has accumulated, basically.
Yes. Yes.
The other question I have, none of this is new technology.
No.
This is not like experimental stuff that we're...
No, it's used on water treatment side already,
right?
And for desalination for water treatment on the coast. So if you're on the coast, you have the option of discharging the concentrate back into the ocean, which obviously we don't have that option here. So the wastewater influent flows to the plant are currently just under 2 million gallons a day, and the first phase for this project, we're looking at designing the facilities to be able to treat 2.81 MGD, which is the 10-year, really the 11 to 12-year projected flow. And then the next two phases being in 3.43, and the current plant is designed to treat 4.8 million gallons a day. So that would be the final phase. And these would be done at, they're projected to be done at certain times, but they would be done whenever they needed to be done based on the flows increases based on customer population and customer projections as they continue to grow. The TDS removal facility would be designed to treat less than that because the reverse osmosis process removes much more of the salts than we need to meet our permit limit. So we actually will only take about 60% of the effluent after it goes through the current treatment process, run it through the reverse osmosis process, and then blend it back in with the treated effluent to be able to meet our limit of 400 milligrams per liter. And we'll actually be designing it to with a safety factor in there, something much lower than 400 milligrams per liter. I won't go over this too much, but this is just a site plan that shows the plant. Most of the facilities will be constructed in about the center of the slide, and then the deep injection well. We are showing it at the northeast corner of the site. That may change, but as we get into the final design and determine the best location for that deep injection well. And I'm going to skip that slide for now. So the deep injection well, we're planning on constructing one well at the site where I just showed that last slide at the site plan. Depending on the capacity that we achieve, so these wells are required by EPA to be able to be drilled down to a location where the total dissolved solids concentration in the groundwater is 10,000 milligrams per liter. So down below any possible water supply that could be used, or any groundwater that could possibly be used for a water supply. So that's the requirement. We're estimating, and we have limited data at the moment, we're estimating that to be about 10,000 feet deep that we have to drill in order to be able to get down to where the concentration of the total dissolved solids is 10,000 milligrams per liter. So very, very deep.
Just for clarification, you're talking about drilling a deep injection well that will end up having the base of it be below the current, any current surrounding aquifer layers, so you're going down below any water that would be pulled out for use by humans, for farm use, agricultural use, et cetera.
That's right. That's right.
Okay. Thank you for the clarification.
Sure. And as a matter of fact, along those lines, not only does the concentration need to be 10,000 milligrams per liter or greater, which would be unusable for water supply, essentially unusable, we also have to have a confined layer of rock to be able to prevent any potential contamination of the water supplies above it. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Thank you. I'm just interested in the aquifer itself. Do you have an opinion about all the development that's occurring, and is that going to damage the aquifer? You know, as our water supplies gets more scarce.
This deep injection well would have no impact to the drinking water supplies in the aquifer.
But the project itself, if you could address that, the actual project to put water back into the Blacksburg.
Because doesn't an aquifer
into the Blacksburg aquifer?
Yeah, the district already already recharges the aquifer. So we are already returning flows to the aquifer to help preserve the water supply.
How does that aquifer refill?
How are you returning the waters to the
So the rapid infiltration basins are essentially large basins that allow the water just to infiltrate. So after it's treated at the wastewater plant, and we send it to the rapid infiltration basins, then it infiltrates back down into the aquifer.
Well, aquifers have to refill by rainwater and so forth. That's kind of my question. I know it's not really related to what you're talking about, but it's, there's so many aquifers. I know there's one that comes down through the center of the United States, Kansas, and all of that. And they discovered way back in the late 50s that the farmland was dying because cities were taking water out on the edges of the aquifers, and only nature refills the aquifers.
So I just want to jump in. Amy Lathan, General Manager at Cherokee Metropolitan District. And you're absolutely right. The aquifers, we have got to protect the water in the aquifers. And, of course, Upper Black Squirrel Management District does a very good job of protecting that. This particular project, as you just mentioned, it doesn't have anything to do with the water rights that we have. Cherokee actually returns more water than we pull out of the basin, because we return all of the effluent that we run through the wastewater treatment facility, even from sources that are outside of the basin. So we're actually returning more. This project will actually clean the water really closer to the background levels of the TDS that are in the area. And this is strictly the effluent that we're putting into the rapid infiltration basins that are currently 100% of our effluent is going back into that aquifer. So there are some estimates that actually have more water going in than we're drawing out. But you're absolutely right about that. That's just a different issue because that's the water determination and all of the water rights that the district has to return. And we actually have had some recent legal work done on that. And so we're very excited about this in particular because although it doesn't deal with the actual removal and then the amount of water to go back in, it cleans it to a much lower level of TDS. And it will improve not only the quality within the aquifer, but the quality to the customers that we serve with that water. Okay. Does that help?
Well, I guess so. I don't know. I just know that I'm very old for one thing, but but way back in history, where I grew up, the city of Wichita had polluted the Ninneskah and Arkansas rivers and didn't want to clean them up. So they built pipelines up into the county where I lived, north of Wichita, and bought water rights up from farmers to pipe water to Wichita. And just as a matter of interest, my father fought that case for 13 years and lost in the United States Supreme Court. Wow. And the next year, Nixon founded the EPA. Mm-hmm. So it was reversed. But that's why I'm so interested, because water is always a huge problem. Mm-hmm. It's one of the biggest ones. And so that was my question. I'm not an expert by any means.
And you're right to ask it. There's a tremendous amount of development going on in the eastern part of El Paso County. There really is. And so I think a lot of folks kind of look at all that and wonder, what are we doing with this water? But that's a different body, a governing body to govern those water.
If I can, I'm on the Water Quality Management Committee as a representative for CAC, as well as my own personal interest. This is part of recharging the aquifer. If, in fact, they didn't do this project, then they would be putting water that is actually higher in TDS, these salts. Okay. With this project, they end up, putting water back into the aquifer that is potentially drinking water quality. Eventually, after it goes underground, sits underground for a while, then it can be pumped out and used again. So this is a great example of reuse and recycle. It is unusual for a wastewater treatment facility to do this. This is one of few that I'm aware of. Again, all the technology is accepted. The use of a deep well for injecting to get rid of salts and things, is done a lot in Colorado. It's mostly based around the oil fields. They do an awful lot of deep well injection to get rid of nasty streams of water, but they're down so low that they are expected to never be able to migrate up to drinking water. So this project is really, I guess, innovative. I don't know how much it costs, but the actual cost per customer is very low. It's about $25 a month, which was one of the questions I had. So it looks like it's affordable. It looks like it does a great job in terms of assisting to recharge the aquifer. This by itself isn't that much in terms of the total aquifer, but every bit helps.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, thank you, Hal.
I'm just curious, it was mentioned this is unusual for a wastewater treatment facility, so why are they doing this? Is this voluntary? Was it mandated?
This was because in the beginning, when this facility was opened, it was not designed to treat for total dissolved solids. It was just a kind of a regular wastewater facility using a different technology. The state then came along and said that because we discharge into groundwater through these rapid infiltration basins, and because that groundwater, of course, is in the upper black groundwater aquifer, that's drinking water, and we must keep that TDS level below 400. And so our effluent was averaging around 550. So it's not grossly over the limit, but it is over the limit. And so for groundwater discharge, the state put this requirement on the district. For surface water discharge, for example, something that comes out of the city of Colorado Springs or many, many other wastewater treatment facilities, if they're doing surface discharge, there is no TDS limit. The limit comes because it's groundwater discharge. And so the timing was pretty rough on the district at the time, back then, because the new facility had just been built, and the state kind of came along. I guess it was about 3 months before the facility opened and said, oh, by the way, your TDS limit is thus, and there was no way to treat for that. So Cherokee did spend some time objecting to that and trying to make a case for a higher limit for groundwater discharge, and was not successful. And so this is a compliance order on consent.
Thank you.
Yes.
Hal, thanks so much for clarifying that.
Trying
and
to.
the presenters, too. I think you guys presented it really clear. I'm not a wastewater engineer. I just know that it flows downhill. And that's if there's no other questions or comments, I'd like to move to approve.
Is there any more to your presentation that you'd like to?
Oh, sorry.
The only thing I was going to mention was that because we were going so deep and there's some unknown as to what the capacity of we'll be able to discharge with the injection well, is that there may be a need for a second well, and the district owns land around the rapid infiltration basins that's available, or right adjacent to essentially the same property, that they would use for a second well if that was needed, or possibly could be located on the same site if the geology would allow it, but there may be a need for a second well, and that's also included in the application.
Okay.
Just for clarity, in case anybody has any further kind of misgivings about the deep injection wells, how do you get approval for a deep injection well? Just real quick.
The EPA has the jurisdiction for the permitting, and we actually have a meeting scheduled with them in March 11th.
So this isn't something you decide?
That's correct.
No.
That's my point. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Are there any other deep injection wells in that area? That's a relatively rare thing in El Paso County, isn't it? Okay.
Yeah, there's none that are currently active in that area that are using this. We believe there are some oil and gas wells, but not really close to this area.
Okay. Okay, good questions. Okay. Okay. Tamara, do you want to go ahead with here?
Yes, I move to approve, recommend this, request. Is that right?
Okay. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Thank you, both
Thank
of you.
you.
Thank you. Mhm. Yeah.
How
think
opposes it? I'm not kidding.
Oh, yeah, definitely so. Definitely so.
Speak
Okay.
now or forever.
Mhm. Okay. Item C,
Title VI and Environment Justice and Limited English Proficiency Plans.
Good afternoon. Jason O'Brien, PPACG Transportation Planner. So if you recall, this item originally, back in January, included the public participation plan as well, which is the guidance document that really guides all of our public involvement activities that we do in transportation. That was pulled back in January so we could address some comments from our federal partners, some comments and requests that they had. We did bring the Title VI Environmental Justice Plan and the Limited English Proficiency Plan to you last month for discussion, answer some good questions. There were no comments at that time. Again, very briefly, Title VI Environmental Justice and Limited English Proficiency Plans are required for recipients of federal funding, so we need to produce those. They help us provide an inclusive planning process, but they do not determine which projects can or will be funded. This update of these plans is coming a little bit late in our current long-range planning cycle, so a lot of what's in them will apply to our next long-range transportation plan and our next transportation improvement program. They're not very aggressive as these plans go, I don't think. They do meet requirements, and they do provide some suggestions and some voluntary options for going further with these things, if that's the desire at the time. I think that really the big advantage provided by these updates over the previous versions is a lot more clarity and a somewhat deeper analysis of current conditions. So they really just provide a better platform or foundation for doing these analyses. If you recommend these plans today, we'll be bringing them to the board for adoption next month. We are requesting a recommendation of both plans today. However, you do have the option to recommend either, both, or neither of the plans.
Okay. Questions?
What's the relationship between the public participation plan that was pulled and these two plans? Does one flow into the other, or will these need to be changed based on the updates to the public participation plan?
These shouldn't need to be changed based on the update to that plan. These were sort of updated with some sensitivity to aspects of the PPP that might change. The public participation plan is sort of the master document for the participation elements, but the Title VI and Environmental Justice Plan and LEP plan do have some internal process elements that aren't really public participation, but generally I would say the public participation plan guides everything, and these are sort of sub-plans for the most part.
Does it make more sense to wait for the public participation plan to be finalized before we approve the subsets within it? That's sort of an open question, but no.
I could see where that would be reasonable. I just think in the particular way it's playing out, they're separated enough content-wise that it probably isn't necessary. There's definitely some overlap. The plans refer to each other. You know, the public participation plan gets into a little bit limited English proficiency, Title VI, environmental justice, minority and low-income concerns, really more references those plans, though, as they are.
Okay. Further questions?
Yeah, these are federal requirements, is that right?
Yes, they are.
Okay. So isn't it probably is more efficient to just kind of put it together and get her done, right?
Like that.
Do you mean to
Just to
go ahead now?
get it done? It makes, to put them together.
I think she's talking about the Title VI in the limited English, this set here, not the overall communication plan.
That's definitely reasonable. We actually did put two of them together, so typically your Title VI plan and your environmental justice plan, they're separate. But the analytical methods are so similar and the subject matter is so similar, and they're intended to work together. So we thought just eliminate some duplication of effort, some redundancy, and do them together. So they use a lot of the same, for example, statistical files and geographic files, so it's easier, but we can still satisfy the requirements and the intentions and sort of the spirit of both of those plans. with them in one plan. And actually, limited English proficiency is another federal requirement that comes from, it's really an extension of Title VI, protection against discrimination by national origin. So we thought it also would make sense to put that in with those others, but that there's a federal requirement that that be a separate document. So we wanted to just meet the requirement.
Okay. Thanks.
Get it, Ro?
Thank you
Okay.
for the question.
Ellen?
Just if this is not in your bailiwick, please speak up.
Okay.
I'm just curious. You've piqued my curiosity. I'm gathering with the upcoming 2020 census that there'll be more data about the LEP, limited English proficiency population in our region coming out after that, but I know it's roughly 2 or more years before that data becomes available in a usable capacity, so I'm just curious, how will that shape the next update, if at all? The timing?
I'm not sure exactly what will be different in the next census, what new attributes will be collected, personally. It's a good question. It probably will have some effect.
Okay. Thanks.
Sorry I couldn't answer your question.
Okay, go ahead. Hal?
Am I correct that basically the impact of the plan will be, and correct me or expand, will be to add a step in all processes to do some evaluation of environmental justice criteria for each project, things of that nature? Is that what the real impact of this is?
Yes, it is.
As far as we're concerned?
Yeah. They're procedural plans. As I said, they won't really affect outcomes. We'll still be free to select the projects that we want to fund, but they will have an impact on procedurally how we go about the planning process. And they won't really be new requirements necessarily, because we've had previous versions of the same plans with similar requirements in place already with the previous plans we've done. I can tell you that the federal government is paying more attention to these things just recently in the last couple of years. So we're expecting and have already felt a little bit more emphasis on equity issues. So, yeah.
Okay. Further questions? Yes, go ahead. Aubrey.
Sort of a conceptual question. I'm wondering why these things aren't built into the scoring criteria instead.
Good question.
Would that would change the outcome? Because you said this doesn't change the outcome. You're going to do the project no matter what. You could just sort of tweak how you do it to lessen the impact on communities, right? Had it been in the scoring criteria, it would have more teeth. Is that fair to say?
Yes and no is my answer. First, there has been at least one environmental justice scoring criteria in the scoring processes already. So that has been there and will continue to be there, most likely. I can say that in the environmental justice plan, it's recommended that perhaps there be more than one criteria, because that's where they'll have teeth. It is only a recommendation, but that's part of the plan. And really some more focus on what the criteria mean. So again, there's been a big emphasis on clarification in this update. Other MPOs, other transportation departments I've worked at get in trouble because they'll do a nonsense environmental justice analysis. They'll say, look, we spent $500 million in this minority low-income neighborhood over here, but the project basically leveled the neighborhood to build an interchange. You destroyed it, so they get it back from the FHWA or FTA saying that you cannot move forward with your plan because your environmental justice analysis doesn't make any sense. So that's been the real emphasis, is to probably continue including one or more project scoring criteria that are environmental justice related, as we have been, but just to really clear up how they work and what they mean. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. What does that mean for this version of the plan, though, since we've already set the scoring criteria? How will this interact with those?
As I said, this environmental justice and these versions probably will have their greatest impact on the next long-range plan. Typically, They would come earlier in the process, and traditionally, they're updated sort of early on in each planning cycle. But because of staffing and various other issues, turnover, things like that, it's coming a little late this time. We will catch some of the new recommendations and requirements on the back end, but yeah, they won't have that level of impact, you're right, until the following plan where they'll be in place from the start.
Okay, good questions.
Yeah.
Any further questions or comments? Okay, then we need a motion. Okay, Ellen.
I make a motion, we recommend for approval to the board.
Okay, second?
A second.
Okay, that's Tamara. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All against? Okay. Okay.
Thank you.
So, okay, thank you. Okay, NEPCO.
So I'm going to kick this one off real quick. At our last meeting, we got a presentation from Tom Bierfa requesting that NEPCO have a seat on the PPACG CAC. Because it was an information item, we were not able to take any action on our discussion. After that meeting, Jim Moore and myself both did research on the PPACG board bylaws and the CAC bylaws. Neither of those bylaws limit who can be members. It would have to, all members have to be approved by the PPACG Board of Directors, but there is no limitation to the numbers that the CAC can bring forward for positions of membership, such as Kono or League of Women Voters. From there, it's back to your all discussion. If you don't mind being here for answering questions, but it's discussion time.
Okay, so we do not need a bylaw change? Am I correct?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Tamara?
I think it's great, getting more folks involved in this process, so I'm always in support of that. One question I did have is, as far as quorums go, does that affect, is our quorum based on a percentage of the members, chairs that are available, or are they just a set number?
Our quorum is based on the number of members currently approved by the board.
Right.
So you'll notice that, for example, we have several seats that are unfilled right now. Those vacant seats do not count against our number.
Okay.
We must have 30% of the current voting membership.
Okay.
So.
Okay, good question.
My question is, they have to be approved by the board, but how do they get nominated into, does the board look at any criteria around the recommendation of people, or do they, just show up, or what?
Here we are. So how we believe this has been handled in the past, although it has been a very long time and we have no documentation on it. The CAC would recommend a seat to be placed for NEPCO. NEPCO would then determine who they wished to appoint. Our first step would be asking the board to approve a NEPCO seat on the CAC. NEPCO would then present a member that would then have to be approved by the board again.
But there's no codified process laying around somewhere, because it hasn't been done in quite a while.
Since almost our inception, yeah.
I guess my question is, do we, like HOA decks or Kiowa decks and all that, you have different levels. You have the decks and you have the rules and regulations and all those kind of things, and they require different levels of getting all the board members approved or not. So outside of the bylaws, do we have any mechanism for defining, how a chair gets designated for the CAC?
By NEPCO or by us? By
Anybody.
CAC.
But
No,
what I'm looking towards is the future. I'd rather have some more formal way than, hysterical memories, historical memories.
Same
but-
difference.
Are you saying that you don't want us to establish a precedent of ad hocing?
Exactly.
Thank you.
You know, what I'd like to have is some kind of a thing that says, oh, applicants have to go to this committee or something. The committee makes a recommendation to the CAC, which then makes a recommendation to the board. So just some simple thing that hopefully doesn't require changing bylaws and all that.
Right.
But who knows?
Go ahead.
So the way that currently would be met is for our citizen at-large positions. We do develop a nomination committee who reviews those applications and et cetera. For all of the other positions, such as Kono or
The cities or the county.
that organization nominates their person. The only thing we have asked is that it never be an employee of an organization.
No, I understand that part of it. What I'm a step before then. How do you create another designated chair on the CAC?
Because this is brand new. This is the whole organization that is brand new to us. I know you've been around a while, but it's brand new to this particular board. So, Hal?
How about the CAC makes a decision on whether or not they want to ask the Board of Directors to create another seat specifically for a organization who would increase diversity, increase geographical coverage, and is already representing a population in a number of different ways. We make a request to the Board of Directors of PPACG to add another seat.
A designated seat.
That's correct.
Yeah, to our board.
To our group.
So we could do that within the context of just an agenda item on a meeting without changing a bunch of bylaws and all that. That's what I'm trying to get to,
Yep.
It's just
Easy
how do
to
we do
process.
these?
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
I'm all in favor of, having it,
Can we make a motion along the lines of, I guess I tried to verbalize at this meeting, or do we need to wait another meeting now?
Because this is an action item, if you create a motion now and it is approved by the CAC, it can go to the board next week on the 13th.
So moved.
I need you.
I'm sorry, Ellen.
No, quite all right, Hal, quite all right. I just happened to notice that we have in front of us an example of a very proactive organization of homeowners called NETCO, who have a history now in their short life of being involved in community interest items on multiple levels, multiple diverse topics for the homeowners of their region. And I was just wondering if we could consider them, as Hal just indicated.
I like her language better.
So if everyone agreed that we could consider them, then we could make a nomination. Or we can just make a nomination and see who agrees.
So hang on, so the
Okay,
motion.
I'd like to make a motion.
That we
Okay.
create a permanent seat at the CAC for NEPCO.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion that we ask the PPACG Board of Directors to create a permanent seat on the CAC for NETCO.
Second.
Okay. Here, okay. All of those in favor? Or do we need further discussion on this? Hal, do you have some more?
No, but we need to ask that question.
Can I get just a little bit more information? I guess
Sure.
For us, those of us who are representing cities and counties, that's the value we're bringing. Can you just kind of convince us what value you're bringing and why we should vote yes on adding a seat?
Okay.
Very good.
Yeah, just as follow-up from what Tom presented to you back on January 30th. We represent basically a big portion of northern El Paso County that has no representation today outside of just county representatives. There's a tremendous amount of growth in the northern El Paso County. When you look at Northgate Road and Shoup Road, all going north into Black Forest, Monument is exploding. Palmer Lake has a lot of development plans. We actually responded to over 25 development plans, either from the county or from the town of Monument, just on, before it's even public disseminated, just what about impacts on transportation, water. Is it compatible with the existing communities that are already there? Do you put, zero lot line condominiums next to 5-acre homes, right? 5-acre lot homes. It just doesn't make a lot of sense there. So we've been doing this since 2000, representing, but there was probably just an average amount of activity over the last 5 years until about 2 years ago, and it's just exploded for us. So we don't see that slowing down in the next 2 or 3 years. So the fact that we're heavily involved in the pre-planning and the plea aspects and cover so much diversity from water to transportation, and we touch so many different government bodies and metro districts that are involved up there, it gets very complicated. And so a lot of times we're the intercommunication medium between the town of Monument or El Paso County. One may not know that the other one's made all this development plans, but nobody's addressing the road infrastructure. And an intersection is going to go from 3,000 cars a day to 20,000 cars a day in just 2 years if somebody's not addressing those kinds of things. So that's the kind of stuff we get involved in to try to make sure that everybody's being smart about the development. We're not trying to prevent development. We're trying to just make sure that everything is done with smart development initiatives and that everything is being looked at and not ignored, right?
I think, I would agree with you, having a body that is interconnected with you are talking about Monument, Palmer Lake area, and the county, and really also northern Colorado.
Exactly.
What I want to make sure is we're not providing these 4 entities, the Palmer Lake Monument, the Ball Train, they'll have to have another vote. I think that's something we do need to be aware of.
Right.
And so, as much as I am a very inclusive person, however, I don't think it's then fair to bring our halls when they only have one seat. Just want to throw that out there. I'm not trying to sway anyone in any way, but I think that's something we need to be aware of.
Yeah. Just another example is we're expanding our border, our focus area really further east now into Meridian Road, which encompasses a lot of Black Forest, which is not represented here today as well, right? So that could be another inclusive way of trying to get some common issues on the table that all of those folks that currently live up there and people that plan to live up there, can be addressed.
I do know that El Paso County obviously does represent the Black Forest Meridian area, as you know, anything that's not incorporated by CSR or Monument or Palmer Lake. I also want to mention that the TAC actually has a big representation by the El Paso County with a lot of research in El Paso County. I'm not saying that's a bad thing at all whatsoever.
Right.
I just want to stress everyone that there is representation, and there is significant representation of the county in the TAC.
Right.
I think here we have 3 also, and then 2 of us from Colorado Springs and Palmer Lake were vacant. Is there somebody from Palmer Lake that we can get involved, as?
Very possibly. Just like the city of Monument's gone through a lot of change here recently. Terry could probably talk to that quite a bit with all the change at their trustee level as well as the town managers and the other things that have gone on up there. Palmer Lake has been, I don't think, quite as heavy turnover, but they still have desires up there. And there's a lot more communities wanting to push up that direction that's not already planned open space. So they're going to have the same battles that the town of Monument's seeing now. Also, think about this as we're not trying to overlap on what the county represents. We're representing the people that already live there that may not necessarily agree with what the county wants to do as far as allowing new planned developments. There's a good example. There's a couple of developments going just south of Black Forest. It's almost like urban densities. There's 7,000 homes planned just south of Black Forest in that open area north of Cordera and some of those areas where they're trying to do it all off well water. And it's like, this makes no sense, folks. We need to get, the pipelines from CSU, plugged in so they can use renewable sources for those type of densities because it's going to impact the water wells and the other functions of a lot of people that currently live there, right? So that's where we try to, make sure that everybody's interests are represented fairly and that we're not just representing one particular party view or the other.
Aubrey.
I have similar concern about overrepresentation, but I think I've reconciled it in my mind with the fact that development in that area is overrepresented at a similar level compared to the rest of the region, I think. If anybody wants to counter that a little bit, I'd be open to it. But
What do you mean, Audrey? Could
Well,
you clarify?
I think that development is overrepresented in
Development.
Yeah.
Pro-development.
No, I just mean happening development-wise. And so then overrepresentation to a certain degree with people on this board is sort of in line with that level of development that's happening in northern El Paso County. But
Courtney, I think you're next.
So kind of echoing the same concerns, I mean, I don't disagree that NEPCO's a great addition to the membership. That said, knowing how potentially open additions to membership are, I'm thinking specifically of 4 groups that would honestly fit the same criteria as far as, so the Active Transportation Advisory Committee, with as transportation focused as we are, should we have a special seat for people that represent different modes of transportation? Or should we have somebody from the specific southeast area of Colorado Springs that maybe doesn't have a homeowners association development that's as collective? So I'm worried about setting a precedent that because people have the resources to show up, they get a voice in prioritizing the funding that goes across our transportation projects. Not to say this group shouldn't have a voice, but that this group should have a process for determining what groups are relevant.
I'll agree with that, too. You guys need to have a process and a way of approving that you want, so you don't get overrun by people that really don't contribute the way you want them to, right?
Sorry. Carrie.
I could be wrong here, but I looked at, when NEPCO said they wanted to join us, I looked at them as a northern kind of version of Kono. I think of Kono as being Colorado Springs, period, and south, more the south. So I feel like they're a complement. NEPCO's a complement to what Kono's already doing. So I don't look at it as additional seats. I look at it as, with those 2 organizations, they're covering then El Paso County more equally. That's just my opinion.
Yeah,
Okay, go ahead.
you know,
And then Hal.
what I think is a big advantage to have a NEPCO in there is that their crystal ball's a little bit clearer on the transportation side of what the impact's going to be to roads, bridges, intersections, which is our bailiwick here. I mean, that's our wheelhouse as to what we look at. And if we don't have good visibility into where the growth is happening as opposed to might happen, I think that's the big advantage to it.
Okay. Hal.
2 quick comments. The first one is I think that it's a very positive thing to have representation from the areas that are growing. I, for instance, live in an area that's already developed. Yes, there's sporadically a house being built, but nothing compared to what's up north. I think it's great to have people that are concerned about that, raising their issues. Number 2 is I do think the people around this table have enough grit to say no if people come in and suddenly we get 15 organizations want to come in and join us. While I agree there is value in a process, I really don't want to slow this one down. That's my.
Could I say, too, that someone mentioned, Green Mountain Falls, and the mountain area. We have Bill from Park County, way up in the mountains, and that's really a growing area, too. The watershed is in danger. There's just so much going on in the mountains, and then, as you mentioned, right at the border of El Paso County. And, of course, there's a big problem there about finishing the gap between Monument and Castle Rock, and all that's going on. So I think also, whoever mentioned it, perhaps it was you, to have a voice with eyes on the ground who live there. I think that's very important, even though as a body we would try to be objective to everybody. I don't think we would take sides particularly, but I agree with what Ellen moved.
So I have mixed emotions I don't know if I really want to have a very firm where this has not been addressed for years, I guess, since the conception of this organization. I see both sides, and I'm not real sure how I really feel. I'd like to see you in. I think that would be really good, but what do we do in the future? I don't know. I think we need to worry about that, too. I agree with you, Tamara. I definitely.
And how, you're right, I think there's plenty of us who come from full enough to say, yeah, no, we're not interested in having a seat for that, crazy organization, but at the same time, then they have the right to, argue that, and what is our stance on that?
Right.
You can't say, just because you're not wearing the right shoes today,
Yeah.
So I do think it's important that we have some kind of a process and procedure, if there isn't one. If there is one, I think we need to learn what that is.
Right.
Before we make any recommendations or any really actions.
Well, we'd have to set that. We'd have to work out a process.
It does not exist right now.
It doesn't exist, so we'd have to work that out. So, Orrin.
I think we're talking about setting criteria for who we would consider in the future.
Right.
But given the level of organization and experience of NEPCO, I would think that they would meet any criteria that we might set in the future. So instead of worrying about if we vote yes now for NEPCO, that we've set some precedent that we can easily point to all of this organizational ability or experience that they've shown to easily meet any future criteria that we might set. So I'm hoping that.
Alan.
So perhaps having listened to so many intelligent, informed minds, we would want to, it's only the truth. Perhaps we'd want to consider separating into two motions. Maybe one motion is whether or not we want to invite the Board of Directors to consider a seat which NEPCO would fill, and maybe the other is maybe a subcommittee to establish the protocols for how we would do this in the future for future organizations, and maybe that will not only clarify our issues but also speed up our process.
Okay, so we would be asking for an additional seat on this board, am I right? Okay, all right, for NEPCO.
So right now, we have one motion out that was seconded, and we're in the discussion phase of it, that says move forward with NEPCO.
Mm-hmm.
And then we could have, once we vote on that, then I think we, vote on a motion to put that to the governance committee or, to establish a process.
Yes. See, you brought up a lot of questions for us, so that's probably good. That's very good,
right?
yes.
Yeah.
Aren't you representing like 30,000 people?
Over 30,000.
Over 30.
Citizens that live up in that part of the county.
Okay, and they're represented, some of them are still represented, definitely by the county.
Yes.
Yeah, but then they're also represented in some of the individual towns as well by those particular members on this board.
And not every HOA is a member today, but as more and more development comes in, we've actually been proactive in recruiting them into the organization.
The HOA.
As that development gets started. So the developer actually becomes a member first, since he runs the HOA until it gets finished out to 75%, and then the actual homeowners take over.
Take over from there.
Right. So that's typically how we operate. But it's been growing. We've added 5 new members, HOA members, just this last couple of months with all the growth going on, and as we push further east into Black Forest.
Okay. Wow.
Do you guys have an officer or chair positions?
We do. We have, we're a 501c4, so it's all nonprofit. We're all volunteers, no paid positions of any kind. I'm the president, the new president. I was the treasurer for the previous 3 years. Tom, who you met last week, is our vice president, and he's in charge of all of our transportation and land use committees. So we have a number of volunteers that get involved in all of these pre-development requests and providing feedback either to the county, the city, or transportation corridors. So we get a lot of people that get involved, but it's a completely volunteer organization at this point.
Are your members typically developers? Or
No, they're HOAs. So think of our members, if, like, I was the president of Fox Pines, which is an HOA just up Baptist Road in the trees. There's about 4 or 5 HOAs that are part of Fox Run and Fox Pines combined. But we represent, my HOA only had 49 homes in it. Some of these HOAs can have, like Woodmore has over 2,000, right? So as if your HOA is a member, then that membership extends to the population that you represent. So everybody who lives in Woodmore, since they're a member of our HOA, is considered a member of our organization.
Is your HOA mandatory?
Are they Kiowa?
Well, Kiowa depends on the size of the HOA. So if you get involved in the HOA rules, some of them, and it's also based on your membership dues. There's a certain threshold, and it's either $500 or $600 a year, I believe, for an HOA. If my individual dues were higher than that, then there's a lot of Kiowa requirements. If it's less than that, then it's a lot less restrictive.
I guess I'm asking some of these questions, and I'll just get straight to the point. What I want to make sure is that the representative that you puts forward to this committee is someone that has the best interest of that.
Yes.
Overall, whether you pay, whether you're a paying member or non-paying, I don't know how
Right.
the organization works out. What because all of us are just Joe Schmo citizens.
Right.
What I don't want is a developer.
No, our expectation is,
NEPCO putting forward the developer,
Sure.
and then they have a very specific
Yes.
self,
we deal with that all the time.
right, and I don't really want to be having.
So the plan is that if you decide to move forward with putting NEPCO on this committee, that it will be one of our board members. And we have 7 board members today. Some of them are president, secretary, vice president. We have a couple of member-at-large. We have a treasurer. So it would be one of those 7 people that are currently on our board today would be recommended for this group, depending on your needs and the availability of our individuals.
And your board members are elected position or appointed?
They're elected by our members. The board is elected by the members, and then the board decides who plays what role. If that makes sense.
Okay, so it wouldn't be a developer, it definitely would be
No,
a
it would not be a
citizen
developer. It would be one of our
living in the
board
area.
members that gets
Right.
involved and has been involved with our business for a long time.
Okay. Okay, I don't even know what's on the.
So we're at the voting stage,
We'll
I
have to
think.
have a read it.
We had a motion, we had a second, we're at the voting.
Call the question.
Yeah. Okay, Alan, could you somewhat repeat what I think you made the motion, so.
Today, only today. I make a motion that the CAC ask the board, the PPACG Board of Directors, to open a seat on the CAC and that it be filled specifically by NETCO.
Okay, for NEPCO.
Yes.
All right, so is that, okay, that motion is on the floor, so I need a second to that?
Well, we had a second, we're at the voting.
Oh, that's right, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Carrie. Okay, so we're at the voting at this point. So all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And all opposed?
I'm unprepared to vote at this time.
Okay, so you're going to abstain? Okay, could that please be noted then, Tamara? Did abstain? Okay, anybody, or the rest of us, all right? Okay, then it carries with Tamara abstaining. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
And may I make a motion within, okay, yeah. Ellen, do you have it? You can.
Okay.
I would like to make a motion that we establish a subcommittee to define the process for adding members to the CAC in the future.
Okay, all in favor of establishing this subcommittee, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. And we will work on that. We'll get, but let's do that at another meeting. Yes.
If you'd like to ask for volunteers, we
I'm
could.
not usually a stickler for things like this.
That's fine. No, that's fine, Hal, I appreciate it.
First, there is a motion, then there's a second, then there's discussion,
Yes.
and then there's a vote.
Mhm.
We don't go 1, 2, 3, and then hold discussion. So now we can hold discussion. I know it's approved, but where you're at.
So if you guys, I mean, Sharon, it's kind of up to you, but if you'd like to call for volunteers, I'm happy to be the organizer of a group so we can meet over the next month, or we can wait until next month to make that an action item to.
I'd like to volunteer as well, and my preference is we get this committee moving forward sooner than later, because my concern is we made this, let's say the board approves it next month or this month, we're going to have a floodgate. We are possibly opening up floodgates right now.
Right.
And so we do need to get on the ball on creating some kind of a process and procedure and really criteria of what organizations can qualify. So I don't think this is something we can just sit on, because we just created a precedence.
Right, right. Okay, so we already have at least two?
Approve of subcommittee.
Yes, they have to approve, yes, they will.
So
If we're getting volunteers in line for that approval.
Okay, so we have three. Do we need to have, normally we have three people on a committee. Do we need, is there anybody else who's interested in doing this? Let me put it that way. Okay, Ellen?
Yeah, I would love to get some of the smaller communities involved.
Good.
I just don't want Colorado Springs. It's just unfair. We're all
Right.
down
I agree.
I'm real small. I would love Park County, Color, Fremont Falls, everyone to get involved in it, because this does impact you.
Definitely, definitely it is. Okay.
Question, has anybody else from El Paso County volunteered? Because I do think El Paso County,
Needs to be there.
that's kind of the gray space between all the cities. And that's-
Right,
so-
definitely. It's higher level of government.
We don't currently have an El Paso County.
Okay, I volunteer.
All right. Okay, okay.
One final comment to somewhat assuage Tamara's concerns. Since you already have a Kono, you could, they're Kono North. So you've already got a designated seat. You can stand at the gate and say, no, we're developing a process, but this precedent was already set years ago. So,
I think what would be very helpful for us, the committee, is to get kind of how Kono is organized, and then also NEPCO, if you don't mind giving us how you're organized. So, because now we have, what you're saying is two very similar entities, and maybe that's kind of how we pattern the process and the criteria.
yeah,
Right.
right.
I'll go ahead and volunteer for that. Now, I'm the second largest city in the county, so I guess that's, I don't know, medium large or whatever we are. But anyway,
And growing very rapidly.
and growing very rapidly. Yes, we are. So, okay, so there's,
I'm sorry.
your chair, you volunteered for chair. Yeah, you bet. You volunteered, yeah.
And
You
that does give
volunteered.
us 5, so we're at a good uneven number, so we can't end up with weird
Tied
splits.
vote.
Good idea.
I have Courtney Stone, Tamara Diffner, Ellen Hossey, Hal Moffett, and Sharon Brown.
Perfect, Hal, you're the only guy. Hey, be honored. That's probably a good thing. Okay, any other, I think we've probably pretty much had this discussion. I think we're all right. So let's move on to 5, and legislative report.
So I'm actually going to stand up just so I can come poke the computer while I talk. So as your packet item states, we track legislation. The items that you all saw at the January 30th meeting were presented to the Board of Directors and were approved with the positions that were stated. The items that have been added since that point. If you have been following the legislative tracking page, you will notice these. If you are not, you won't. And again, just before I go into the 2 new bills, if you are ever interested in attending or participating, these meetings take place at 3 o'clock every single Monday, either in the upstairs conference room or you can join by phone. All of the information is online now under our events because Courtney pointed out that I didn't have it there. So we fixed it. Okay, So the two bills that were added on after our discussion, and so therefore the Legislative Committee has made a recommendation, but the Board of Directors has not ratified. House Bill 191199 is the Colorado Clean Pass Act. It would allow electric vehicles to not pay tolls on toll roads, and the Legislative Committee would very much like to oppose this bill.
Yeah, I think, yeah.
I mean,
I know.
So let's see, we're giving them $7,500 to buy the thing, and now, tolls are free. Let's just buy the car for them and give it to them.
The other, there's actually three that I didn't think of. Senate Bill 19029, the income tax residency presumption for military, that was moved from, is being suggested we move from monitor to support. The board did do a legislative roundtable with our delegation last Friday, the 22nd, and at that we were able to actually ask what that bill was intended to do and what its details were. That was able to clarify the confusion about it and move us from a monitor to a support. That bill is designed right now. Our military members of our community who move out of state because they are stationed there, not only are taxed out of state for their state tax, but are also taxed the income tax for Colorado. This just resolves that. They only have to pay one state's income tax, not both.
Do they get to choose?
I don't know the answer.
So if they're from Texas, they're not paying income tax anyway.
So I believe that it makes it so whatever your state of residency is where you pay income tax, rather than being where
double taxed,
where yourself is.
Okay.
So, and then one other bill that I actually think is of a lot of interest to this community, we did not take a position on, we did add to our list for discussion, is House Bill 191095. It's physician assistance, supervision, and liability. And the reason why this bill is on the list to talk about, we're going to be presenting it to our Area Agency on Aging Director, Joe Urban, because a lot of our rural communities have a problem getting enough medical professionals to come and serve their communities. This is a bill that may influence that, and so it is a bill that the committee will be discussing on Monday. Did anybody have any other questions about the legislative session or how the committee or board are handling issues?
How are they going to, what is the suggestion to help these rural communities with medical?
So this specific bill allows a physician to supervise more physician assistants than they are currently allowed to, which would enable one physician to supervise a larger number. And because most of us actually see physician's assistants and not physicians, it enables one doctor to have provide services for 6 people instead of 3. I don't know what the numbers are, so.
Yeah, but example, okay.
And we are asking our Area Agency on Aging if this is something we feel like does relate to our direct ability to provide services. It may be a bill that we ask to monitor because of its importance to our communities, but that PPACG does not take a position on as we don't provide medical care.
Right. Okay.
And I don't know what the answer on that will be.
Okay. Roy, I hate to put you on the spot. What is your feeling on this?
Say that physicians' assistants in general provide quality care and are worthwhile, and many people in different situations around the country see a physician's assistant and never see
a doctor. Right. Okay.
On the other hand, the more providers you empower, the more chance of somebody not providing quality care, and the more you spread out the supervision, the less vigorous it is. So you have to weigh the pluses versus minuses. I would say overall it's worthwhile.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate your expert opinion. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Okay.
Okay, PPACG, our environmental program, what do we? Okay, we have our executive director.
Okay, thank you for having me, and I'll be brief given the hour, but I'll stay as long as you want to talk about environmental stuff that's going on. Before I dive into this, Jessica sort of glossed over, but we had a great session last Friday with our legislative delegation. We had a bunch of folks from our board, some other elected officials from some of our local jurisdictions, at least one military community rep went with us. We had about 12 of our legislators meet with us last Friday morning, and our boards wanted to get more involved in legislative stuff and remind our legislators who we are, what our key programs are, what our policy positions are. We put together a really nice brochure that describes our legislative priorities for this year. We can maybe get that out as well. But great job by Jessica working with our lobbyists and with all of our legislators to pull that together. It was a really, really good event. So environmental programs. I know Jessica mentioned that you all were asking about it over the past couple of months. Hal's been involved in our water quality committee, and I can say a few words about that, and also what we're doing in the air quality arena. Kind of stepping back a little bit first, I feel like I've been spending most of my time, at least in 2019, hiring people and spending time with Ken in environmental planning because he's been helping us out in water and air issues there as well. But we've been hiring a bunch of people the past couple of weeks, and this is sort of related to what I'm going to get into with environmental stuff. But Melissa Martz started in our AAA program as program development administrator a couple of weeks ago. I don't know if you've met her yet, but she's awesome. We've got another rock star starting next week. His name is Will Mast, and he's going to be our innovation and technology lead, and he's going to coordinate our GIS and modeling efforts internally throughout PPACG, and that includes in our environmental planning area, and also externally, where he's going to engage with the local jurisdictions, the university community, a bunch of other partners to coordinate on data, modeling, forecasting, all that kind of stuff. We run a land use model and a travel model. So we've got some really good tools and really good data that we want to coordinate on. So Will starts next week. We're in the process of hiring a GIS analyst, hopefully in the next couple of weeks. We're going out next week for a transportation planner position, so you'll see that pretty soon. And to keep them all straight, I think it was last Friday, we closed our recruitment for an environmental planner position. That's one that we used to have in our work program and in our budget, and then it went away last year in 2018, but we brought it back for this year, and for a couple of critical reasons. So we're going to start going through applications here pretty soon and hold interviews and hopefully get somebody on board as our primary environmental planner within the next month. But we have two main areas of responsibility I wanted to mention in environmental planning at PPACG. We're the lead water quality planning agency for our region, for our three-county region, and that's an emphasis on water quality. It's not so much on water supply or drinking water, but water quality, and I'll say a few more words about that in just a minute. And then secondly, we're a coordinating body for air quality issues for our region. We coordinate with our local jurisdictions. We coordinate with the state, the Colorado Department of Public Health and the Environment, and CDOT and other partners, and I'll say a few words about that as well. But first of all, on water quality, a couple of things we're working on right now. We're in the process of updating what's called our area-wide water quality management plan. It's also known as the 208 plan, because it's 208 of the Clean Water Act, the section that comes from. Basically, that's a plan that identifies what our wastewater needs are going to be long-term throughout our region. If you need a discharge permit and expansion of, say, a wastewater plant or building a lift station, that has to be compliant with our area-wide water quality management plan. And you all have seen the site applications that come through that go to our board for approval. They start with what's called the SARC, the Site Application Review Committee, then go through our Water Quality Management Committee, and then up to the board, and you all make recommendations on those as well. So we've got an overall overarching plan that deals with water quality that divides up our different basins. I think we have 5 water quality basins throughout our region and identifies where the infrastructure needs are in those different basins. So we're going through the process of updating that plan right now. Last time it was updated and adopted by our board was in 2010, so it's getting a little bit old now, and time for an update. So there's been a lot of change, a lot of population growth, and a lot of other infrastructure changes. So you're going to see an update on that soon, hopefully within the next month or so. Like I said, we've been working that with the Water Quality Management Committee. We've got a consultant on board, Brown and Caldwell out of Denver, that's been taking the lead on that. So hopefully we'll have a recommended plan that's going to come to this body soon within the next month or so for a recommendation to take that onto our board. But that's the main work we do in water quality management. Shifting into air quality, We've been in non-attainment in the past. Well, let me back up a little bit. EPA has standards for a number of different air quality pollutants of concern for regions that have to kind of track. And us as a transportation agency, we track these as well. We've been in pretty good shape as far as air quality, but the EPA sets standards for things like dust or particulate matter, carbon monoxide, ozone, and a handful of others. In the past, about 20 years ago, we were in non-attainment for carbon monoxide. It was about a 20-year process, but we're now about to get out of our regulatory coverage with EPA with carbon monoxide. We had to go through a maintenance period for about, I think, a 10-year period, but we're about to go out of our maintenance period for that pollutant within the next year, I believe, is when we're finally out of that maintenance plan. But we've been tracking another pollutant of concern, which is ozone. And that's been one that's kind of caused us to get our air quality technical committee back together. Ozone is not a direct pollutant, but it's a result of a couple of different sources, volatile organic compounds and nitrogen oxide, and those mix with sunlight and cause ozone, bad ozone. And those sources come from many, many different sources throughout the region, whether it's transportation, industrial processing, power plants to some extent, and just a whole variety of other sources. So we're tracking that. The EPA has a pretty complicated formula for identifying where the emissions threshold is, and they've been lowering that over the past decade or so. I think the last time they lowered it was in 2015. So as that standard's been coming down, our emissions kind of go like this. They go up and down. They're dependent on the weather and meteorological conditions and a lot of other factors. So we're getting closer to where we may, potentially we could be in non-attainment of that standard if we have another bad year this year. It's a 3-year average. I'm not going to get into the details with the calculation, but it's based on the 3-year average of certain measures that have been hit over the past couple of summers. And if we have another bad summer with high emissions, the weather doesn't cooperate, there is a chance we could be designated down the road as being in non-attainment. So it's something that we're focusing on. Our Air Quality Committee, we had a meeting right before this meeting this afternoon to kind of roll up our sleeves and identify what can we do on a voluntary basis to get the word out to try to reduce emissions, raise some public awareness, let the public know why this is a public health issue and what we can do to lower emissions on our own personal household basis. There are things we can do, like not mowing your lawn in the middle of the day in the heat of the summer. Believe it or not, that makes a difference. There's hundreds of things we could do to try to reduce our emissions. So we had somebody who focused on environmental planning stuff in the past. Like I said, that position went away, I guess it was in 2017, with the retirement of our previous environmental planning manager, and wasn't funded last year. But we got it approved in this year's budget, this year's work program that started in January. The board saw the need. We pitched the idea to our board to say we really need to ramp up. And this is before we realized we're having some air quality concerns with ozone. So hope to have somebody on board within the next month or so that when he or she wakes up in the morning, they're thinking about water quality, air quality, and other environmental issues that we ought to get involved with. So that's those are the highlights. That's what I wanted to kind of emphasize. But any questions, suggestions, anything we should be aware of?
Sounds good.
Okay.
Can I make a comment?
Appreciate that endorsement.
Yeah. Hal?
I think this is great progress in terms of getting back to where there's enough experts, professionals, et cetera, paying attention to the environmental. So I think it's great that we're moving forward. This is something that I think this committee should be more involved in and more aware of.
Mm-hmm. Good point. And I mentioned, the water quality plan. Obviously, that's going to come through the CAC before it goes to the board. And the same thing with any air quality measures that we're working on a voluntary basis or otherwise. They're going to come through the CAC before they go onto the board. There's been a lot of discussion about making sure we get plenty of public input into whatever we might develop as a community for things that might reduce our emissions. So we'll definitely keep the CAC dialed in. Okay.
Yes.
Just to join on, Kim Mutchler, just to join on with that a little bit, with what Hal said. It's just nice to see so much proactive work happening. You can see a lot of the energy, and I really appreciate what you all are doing. Strategic plan, PPP, adding these positions, it's just nice.
Good to hear that. And thought came to my mind, Jessica doesn't know this yet because it was talked about earlier today, but I'll probably need to engage with you all to help us get the word out, especially as we really do develop a public awareness campaign to raise community awareness about these issues, especially ozone, what we can do as an individual household or business or whatever to manage emissions and whatnot. So really would like to take advantage of, folks, your knowledge here and how we can, get the word out from a bunch of different avenues.
Okay. Good. Thank you.
Okay, sure. Thank you much.
Okay. Any member discussion? Did you, Tim?
Did you have something?
Ellen. Or Ann, I'm sorry. Ann Ash, Green Mountain Falls. I gave this article to Jessica, and she may send you a link. It was in the Pikes Peak Courier, which is our little paper. It's owned by the Gazette now, but we have, it's kind of hard to put the plans in place to thin thousands of acres of Pike National Forest along Ute Pass. And we had a speaker at the trustees meeting in Green Mountain Falls a few weeks ago. It's a very interesting article. The forests have been neglected for many years, and they're trying to figure out a way to get the dead wood out, trim tree, conservation. And we love our trees, but, we have had some terrible fires. And so I invite you to read this. This man that spoke to us, what is his name? Lyle Leverty. And he was so informative. They worked with collaboration, the utilities, the watershed protection plan, which is, the water, of course, mitigating fire risk along Highway 24. And it isn't just 24 either. Black Forest, of course, had that terrible fire. The overgrowth of trees. I'm old enough to remember when Green Mountain Falls really didn't have many trees, because my great-grandfather built a cabin there in 1914, and there had been a big forest fire. So though nature takes care of it, but we live there now, and we don't like to be where there are a lot of fires. So I would encourage you to read this. The other thing that maybe you can put in your calendar later, if you want to, we had a speaker from the Combat Veterans Motorcycle Association, and we've approved by the town, they're going to have a 22.5-mile motorcycle ride up Pikes Peak in August and back to the town, and it's for suicide prevention work with our veterans. So I thought I'd just bring all that to your attention from our little town.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ann. Okay.
A couple of weeks ago, Jessica informed us about a transportation's future technology kind of a seminar that went on, and I attended as much of that as I could. It was basically broken down into two parts. One was about the self-driving cars and the technology and all that that's going on. The other one was a very, I'll call it an animated presentation by CDOT Region 1 about the technology that they're employing that exists today, and that they're actually rolling out now across I-70, I-25. And I just got a notice, an email, because I'm on a couple of email streams, about I-24, or the State Route 24 that goes up between Colorado Springs and Woodland Park. CDOT is laying in fiber. And the reason is they're not laying in fiber so you can get faster Netflix in Woodland Park. What they're doing is, part of this initiative is to create a cloud-based information system called DAISY. And they will have sensors beside the roads, and they will control things like access, ramp access. They'll tie in with Waze and Google Maps. They'll look at, even before you go up the road, you'll drive over a thing in the road that will measure your tread and tell you whether you can go or not, based on how much tread you have on your tires. They'll look at, whether you got your windshield wipers on, if you're in a skid mode control so that they know where to deploy ice trucks and all that kind of stuff. This is sensors that are already in your car that speak to systems in your cars. They're just putting fiber-based sensors alongside the roads to pick up that information and to feed it into the database so that they have a more complete picture. They think they can get 40% more capacity out of the interstates in Denver by deploying this system and regulating how much traffic goes where and all that kind of stuff. So it was an interesting article, and Jessica also told me that they now have the presentations, and hopefully we can just put it in the minutes or put it out to people.
When I send out the link with Anne's article, I'll also send the link to the Transportation Technology Forum. It's got the videos from all 4 of our presentations as well as the PowerPoints.
Yeah, and those, especially if you're an engineering geek like me, they're very interesting as to what is going on. The stuff about the self-driving cars is kind of passively interesting to me because, that's the technology of the future, and it always will be. But yeah, you got to pay attention. But the other one about CDOT, that is rolling out right now with the technology exists today. And like I said, they're laying fiber all the way up to Woodland Park to watch 24. It's Daisy. It's the regular DAISY, I think, is what it is. It's an acronym for their implementation, but it's going to be a cloud-based, high-speed. They're actually even putting sensors on construction cones so that they will know when they change the lanes and how to regulate traffic as they change lanes. They're going to be sensing everything they can possibly sense, so they will know what's going on all the major roads. My personal take for this committee out of the seminar was, even with all the stuff that's going on, basically it all depends on well-maintained roads. Because your Tesla is not going to be able to self-drive you while you sleep going to the tech center if it doesn't have a road. Yeah. I have a very interesting, I don't want to tie up the meeting now, but I have a very interesting personal story about self-driving cars, if you want to hear it. So.
Tim, I think you took really good notes, actually, during the presentation. I also attended. I wanted to say thank you to Jessica for putting that presentation on. I thought it was great. I hope you do it again. And I think that was the best place to get just a really good, information download from what's going on, things that we hear about. And sometimes it sounds like fairy tales, but Tim is completely right. Those things are happening, and it's really exciting. And really appreciate you guys spending the time to put that together. I know it takes a lot of effort, and I felt like it went really well, and I think it's only going to get better as we keep doing it. So thank you very much.
Okay.
One more.
Go ahead.
So under member announcements, I wanted to let you all know that Southern El Paso County has an opening for someone on their Park Advisory Board. So if you live in Commissioner Lojinos Gonzalez's district, you're eligible for that. And Commissioner Mark Waller is hosting a town hall meeting with Sheriff Bill Elder and Colorado State Senator Paul Lundeen and Senator Heisey and Representative Tim Geithner on March 9th. And then the last thing I'm going to tell you, on the back table, like where you all put your name tags, there's this beautiful sheet. It is different than the calendar you have in your thing. It's very different because what this has is every single aging activity going on in the upcoming month. So at least through us. So it talks about what is Medicare 101, what is Social Security 101, and then it talks about some of the really exciting ones like the 5th Annual Retirement Series coming up in April, and one of our programs that you may or may not have heard about yet, the New Normal, Sex, Drugs, and Rock and Roll in Retirement. Mm-hmm. Our seminar this month is Aging Solo. So these are interesting topics, and there are flyers that you could take and share with anybody who might be interested in attending and knowing about getting older. Or retiring.
Okay.
Jessica, Sharon, if I may just add on, from an old person's perspective here, I'm so glad that any and all of these are available, and specifically about the sex, drugs, and rock and roll seminar. So much of what I knew about getting older, I learned at the knee of my grandparents and then my mother-in-law 30 and 40 years ago, and having so much of it prove to be true has been an amazing, illuminating experience, and I think that it would be great for all ages to just check in ever so briefly and take a look at the future, which is for some of us now. And as you were kind enough to say, Mr. Co-Chair, the future is happening right now, and in my particular case, it's in my front door. So it can be an excellent tool, and we should. It doesn't hurt us, and probably behooves us to check in. Thank you.
Okay. Any further items for future meetings? If not, then I think we are adjourned. Thank you all for coming. There. No. Oh, that's not.
I know, that has to be really tough.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah.
Is that something